Here are the tiers. Wanna build? Very fun, fun, kinda fun, not fun. First up is Abomination of Llanowar. It's a 3-mana star legendary creature elf horror with vigilance and menace. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of elves you control, plus the number of elves in your graveyard, or elf cards. So it can be any like elf sorceries and instants and stuff. This is a kind of fun commander. I think there are more fun elf ball commanders in this. It's great in the 99, and it gets big, but otherwise I'm not that interested in it. Next up is Agent Frank Horrigan. It's a 7-mana 8/6 legendary creature mutant warrior with trample. It has indestructible as long as you've attacked this turn, or as long as it has attacked this turn. And whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you proliferate twice. That's pretty cool. It's a 7-mana Golgari commander. I like proliferating. I like it as trample. You have to attack for it to get indestructible, but exile removal isn't uncommon these days. Like, it's pretty standard. But I still think that's like a fun commander. Next up is a Kawali, the Seething Tower. This is a 3-mana 3/3 legendary creature fungus. Has Descend to 4, so as long as there are 4 more permanent cards in your graveyard, it gets +2/+2 in trample. And as long as there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard, it gets an additional +2/+2 and can't be blocked by more than one creature. So if you give this thing Menace and you have 8 permanents in your yard, it's actually just unblockable. It ends up becoming a 7/7 basically. 7/7 unblockable that takes 3 hits to knock someone out, 2 with double strike. And I think this is kind of fun. I think it's more fun than just like elf ball there. Next up is Amzu Swarm's Hunger. This is a 5-mana 3/3 legendary creature insect shaman with flying and menace. Other insects you control have menace. And whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, you may make a 1/1 black and green insect creature token. Then put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the greatest mana value among those cards. Do this only once each turn. This is a very fun commander to me. I almost want to build it. I've playtested it a few times, but I think it's just going to go into the 99 of my deck instead of in its own deck. It'll be the Tormod deck. Definitely check that out. Next up is Babala Saga Night Witch. This is a 3-mana 3/3 legendary creature human warlock. You can tap, sack up to 3 permanents. If 3 or more card types among them were the sacrificed permanents, each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life and you draw 3 cards. Technically, I actually have a Babala Saga deck already, so it's not really want to build, I've built it. It is incredibly fun, and I actually have my card is actually signed by Joey from EDH Rec from MagicCon, which was really cool. I love this deck. I don't play it as much. I should probably play it more, actually. I need to get some reps in with it. I don't always win with it, but I always do a lot of fun things. And I actually built mine a little differently. It's a landfall Baba deck. So I can use Baba to like sack lands with like Gitrog out and stuff to draw even more cards. But if I end up losing Baba a bunch, I still just have like a land-based deck to fall back to if need be. Next up is Belby Corrupted Observer. This is a 2-mana 2/2 legendary creature zombie elf. At the beginning of each player's post-combat main phase, that player adds 2 colorless for each opponent who's lost life this turn. So I think this is a very fun commander. I'm tempted to build it. I think it's less fun than that. I kind of want to build this maybe. It's on the borderline. It's interesting to me. So we'll see, maybe it moves up. Next up is Beledros Witherbloom. This is a 7-mana 4/4 legendary creature Elder Dragon with flying. At the beginning of each upkeep, make a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with, when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. And then you can pay 10 life, untap all lands you control, activate only once each turn. I'm going to put this under fun. I think it's more fun than Frank here. The reason why I'm not putting it any higher is it feels like a very combo-centric commander. And while I enjoy them, they're fun. They're not very fun or like make me want to build them. I want this card for the 99 of some decks, but I'm not interested in having it as its own deck. Next up is Bortok Bone Rattle. This is a 6-mana 4/4 legendary creature troll shaman with domain. When it ETBs, if you cast it, choose target creature card in your graveyard, return it to the battlefield if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of basic land types among lands you control. Otherwise, put it into your hand. If this was any colors other than black-green, weirdly enough, this would actually be a pretty fun commander. Specifically, if it was like Boros or Rakdos or like Izzet. But because it's in the 2 colors that already have Yavimaya and Urborg, you can't get any more land types than 2. I mean, I'm sure there might be some ways to do it, like Dryad of the Elysian Grove and Attic Omen, not Vista. But otherwise, I think this is like a not fun commander. I definitely want to try like an Izzet domain deck using Urborg and Yavimaya as ways to get 4 land types. But we'll see. All right. Next up is Karth the Lion. This is a 4-mana 3/5 legendary creature human warrior. When it ETBs or a planeswalker you control dies, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal a planeswalker card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Planeswalker loyalty abilities you activate cost an additional +1 to activate. So this is a very... Actually, I think this is a fun commander. More fun than Beldros. So maybe the tail end of very fun. I'm putting the tail end of very fun. No, actually, I lied. It's going right in the middle here. So the cost is actually interesting because the plus and the minuses are costs to activate them. Any planeswalkers with like a -1, it becomes a 0. And like any zeros become +1. And this is when it ETBs or a planeswalker you control dies, you get to just get another planeswalker, which solves a lot of the problems with Super Friends decks if they don't have a value engine, or you don't have a planeswalker itself is your commander. It provides card advantage, kind of like when planeswalker. Well, I guess not quite card advantage, but it provides cards when it dies, or when another planeswalker dies, or it dies rather. And the 3/5 is like a pretty good stat line. Next up is Chevel, Bane of Monsters. A 2-mana 1/3 legendary creature human rogue with Death Touch. At the beginning of your upkeep, if your opponents control no permanents with bounty counters on them, put a bounty counter on target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Whenever a permanent opponent controls with a bounty counter on it dies, you gain 3 life and draw. I think this is kind of fun. So at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent controls no permanents with bounty counters on them. But okay, so I don't know how the wording works on this. So if one opponent has one, I'm assuming you can give it to another opponent. But I think, regardless, I think it's just kind of fun. Next up is Dina Soulsteeper. This is a 2-mana 1/3 legendary creature Dryad Druid. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. Pay 1, sack another creature. Dina gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is a sacrificed creature's power. This is a Golgari life gain commander. I always enjoy these. I think it's less fun than Beldros just because it's a pretty generic effect. It's great, obviously. But just because it's powerful doesn't mean it's fun for me. But yeah, next up is Ankira Hostile Scavenger. It's a 5-mana 3/3 legendary creature human warrior. When it enters the battlefield, create 2 walker tokens. They're 2/2 black zombies. As long as it's equipped, it must be blocked if able. And whenever it and at least 2 zombies attack, she gains double strike until end of turn. So, okay. So it's a weird Voltron deck. I wish it was like a Grave Titan effect where you got a zombie. I understand why it's not. It's from The Walking Dead. So yeah, it makes sense. And the zombies don't get indestructible, which is fine, because the zombies, I guess, are supposed to be, like, getting sacked. I'm going to put this at very fun, I think. I actually don't want to try building this. I might want to build this. No, I don't know if I do. I'm going to put it in very fun. Next up is Glissa Sunslayer. This is a 3-mana 3/3 legendary creature Phyrexian zombie elf. First strike and Death Touch. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card, lose a life. Destroy an enchantment, or remove up to 3 counters from target permanent. This is a kind of fun commander for me. The stats are great, and First Strike Death Touch is definitely a pain in the ass to block, but you have to hit someone like 7 times for this to actually even kill them with commander damage, and it has to deal combat damage to a player. It's not like combat damage at all. So as long as I have like chump blockers, it doesn't really matter. Can give this trample with Shadow Spear, Locks on Warhammer, any other number of ways to do that. But I feel like that's just a lot of steps to make this card fine, and I don't want to play bad cards and combine them with like okay cards to make a card okay. Next up is Glissa Herald of Predation. This is a 5-mana 3/5 legendary creature Phyrexian zombie elf. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose 1, incubate twice, transform all incubator tokens you control. Phyrexians you control gain First Strike and Death Touch until end of turn. This is more fun to me, because you can incubate twice at the beginning of each combat, so incubate 2 twice. So you get 2/2/2 eggs that you can then flip for 2 mana, which is better value than the other Glissa, which is great. And because they're artifacts and not creatures until you flip them, you can just kind of keep amassing a board of these and then board wipe, and then on that, whenever you board wipe, flip all these up into 2/2s and like hopefully win the game on the spot there. So that's something cool you can do. Next up is Glissa the Traitor. This is a 3-mana 3/3 legendary creature zombie elf with First Strike and Death Touch. Are we noticing a trend here? Whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. I think this is more fun than the other ones. It definitely becomes like an eggs deck, I think, pretty quick. One thing that could be interesting is playing this with Griswold, where you can give, is like 3 commanders, giving other people plants, or just having ways to give other people tokens. Because when tokens die, they do go into the graveyard technically. So Genesis Chamber, I think, is a way to do that also, where if you can just like keep pinging down these 1/1s and keep getting artifacts back to your hand, it's great. Next up is Grakma, Skyclave Ravager. 3 mana 0/0 legendary creature Hydra Horror. It enters with 3+1/+1 counters. Whenever another creature you control dies, if it had a +1/+1 counter on it, put a counter on Grakma. Whenever Grakma dies, make an XX black and green Hydra creature token, where X is a number of +1/+1 counters on Grakma. I think this is a fine... I think it's more from the other... I think it goes there. It gets big when stuff dies, but I counter on it, and then you get another Hydra when it dies. It seems fine. I'm not like that interested in building it. Actually, I'm like here. Next up is Greta Sweet Tooth Scourge. This is a 3 mana 3/3 legendary creature, human warrior. When it enters, you make a food. Pay a green, sack of food, put a +1/+1 counter on it. On a target creature, rather. Activate only as a sorcery. 1 and a black, sack of food, draw a card, lose a life. I think this is more fun. Devil. It's a food commander. I like food commanders. It's just like a value engine in the command zone. So if you never want to play your commander, you don't have to use this. Right? Like you can build a Golgari food deck with this, and it's like, oh, it died. Oh well, the deck still functions. Next up is Grismold the Dreadsower. This is a 3 mana 3/3 legendary creature troll shaman with trample. At the beginning of your end step, each player creates a 1/1 green plant creature token. Whenever a creature token dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Grismold the Dreadsower. This is a cool commander. I like this. It gets big. It's like Golgari tokens. You give people plants. And yeah, you just kind of like crack in. It's great. Next up is Grist the Hunger Tide. This is a 3 mana legendary creature Planeswalker Grist. Free loyalty. As long as Grist isn't on the battlefield, it is a 1/1 insect creature in addition to its other types. +1, create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token, then mill a card. If an insect card was milled this way, put a loyalty counter on Grist. Repeat this process. -2, you may sack a creature. When you do, destroy target creature or planeswalker. -5, each opponent loses life equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. This is like a fine commander. I think this is actually a fun commander. Actually, I think it's very fun. I'm going to put it up here with like the insect decks. Next up is Gyomi Master Chef. This is a 4 mana 5/3 legendary creature troll warlock with trample. At the beginning of your end step, create a number of food tokens equal to the number of non-token creatures you had enter the battlefield under your control this turn. Pay 1, sack of food, target creature gains indestructible, tap it. Again, this is just a kind of fun commander. I think it's great in the 99 of decks, but I'm not interested in it as a commander. Next up is Apatra, Vizier of Poisons. This is a 2 mana 2/2 legendary creature, human cleric. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. Whenever you put 1 or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, create a 1/1 green snake creature token with Death Touch. Honestly, this commander seems, I think, just kind of fun. -1/-1 counters have a theme that they've tried a few times, but I'm just not that intrigued by this commander. I think I'm put this under kind of fun. Next up is Herald, King of Skemfar, a 3 mana 3/2 legendary creature elf warrior with Menache. Whenever it enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal an elf, warrior, or Tyvar card from among them. Put it into your hand, put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. I'm not into this. It's like a Tyvar elf warrior commander, and I don't really care about this. Next up is Hogak, a Risen Necropolis. 7 mana 8/8 legendary creature avatar. You can't spend mana to cast the spell, has Convoke and Delve, and you may cast Hogak from your graveyard, and it has Trample. This is a very fun commander, probably unsurprisingly. It was an absolute menace in Modern, but having like I've seen Hogak, one of my friends has a Hogak deck, and it is surprisingly fun. Like, watch it kind of go off. It's very fragile, and like Graveyard Hate or stuff like that kind of like hoses the deck, but it's still just really cool. Next up is Honest Rutstein. This is a 3 mana 3/2 legendary creature, human warlock. When it enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. I'm not really interested in this as a commander. I don't think it's fun. It's an Eternal Witness from the command zone that reduces spells. Next up is Ikra Shadiki the Usurper. It's a 5 mana 3/7 legendary creature, Naga Wizard with Menace. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. It has partner. We're not going over all the partner pairs because that would make this video way too long. However, it's a toughness matters deck in Golgari. I think that's fun. I'd put that like here. Next up is Anami is 1. My name is 1. I'm pronouncing that wrong. This is a 12 mana 8/8 legendary creature spirit. When it comes into play, if you played it from your hand, you may search your library for a spirit card, put it into play. Then you shuffle. When it puts into your graveyard, you remove it from the game. If you do, return target spirit card from your graveyard to play. So you have to go through a lot of steps to make this thing work. You have to cast it from your hand. So you have to get it from the command zone into your hand. Then you have to cast it. It doesn't say if you spent mana to cast it, so you could, in theory, cheat it. If you into play, then you just get to tutor up a spirit card from your deck into play. And this looks like a lot of hoops. This is not fun. Cool art. Love the cost. I don't know why. It's just like, I like this card, but I don't think it's an actual like good commander. Or even like fun. Next up is Azoni, Center of the Web. A 6-mana 5/4 legendary creature elf detective with menace. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may collect evidence 4, so exile cards until you have mana value 4 or greater. If you do, make 2 2/1 black and green spider creature tokens with menace and reach. Sack 4 tokens, surveil 2, then draw 2, and gain 2. So you sack 4 tokens, surveil 2, then you draw 2, and then gain 2, and you gain 2 life. There's any token, right? It doesn't have to be creature tokens. It could be food, clues, treasures, blood. I think this is a fun commander. It's Golgari tokens, but it's actually like a card advantage engine in the command zone, and you get to make spiders, and you're incentivized to attack and exile stuff from your graveyard. Next up is Azoni Thousand-Eyed. This is a 6-mana 2/3 legendary creature elf shaman with undergrowth. So when it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token for each creature card in your graveyard. Green and a black, sack another creature, gain a life, draw a card. Again, this is another fun commander. I think it's going to go here. Maybe here. This is a really good budget deck, so you can just mill yourself, play a 6-mana commander, get a bunch of 1/1s. Again, it's fragile to like graveyard hate, which is unfortunate, but that's a trend with Golgari. And if you play a lot of Golgari decks like I do, you just kind of have to accept that fact and get used to it. Next up is Gerard, Golgari Lichlord. This is a 4-mana 2/2 legendary creature zombie elf. Gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard. A 1 in a Golgari, so 1 green black. Sack another creature. Each opponent loses life equal to that sacked creature's power. Sack a swamp and forest. Return Gerard from your graveyard to your hand. So you don't have to worry about commander attacks, really. And Golgari has plenty of ways of playing lands from the graveyard, so this isn't really a downside. You get to sack a creature to drain opponents. We'll lose life, right? So you don't actually gain the life, which is unfortunate. I mean, you can with other effects, but Gerard itself doesn't do that. I think this is I'm going to go for the tail end of fun. Mostly because Yargo and Multani exist, and you could put that in that deck. Next up is Kaga, Shadow Archdruid. This is a 4-mana 1/4 legendary creature elf druid. When it attacks, it gains Death Touch until end of turn. You mill 2. Then once during each of your turns, you may play a land or cast a permanent spell from among cards in your graveyard that were put there from your library this turn. So it's like a worse Muldrotha, because it's only one permanent, one card. They're both permanent. Muldrotha's, I think, like permanents, and it has to be milled that turn. I'm not really into this. Next up is Lathril, Blade of Elves. A 4-mana 2/3 legendary creature elf noble with menace. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, make that many 1/1 elf, green elf warrior creature tokens. Tap 10 untapped elves you control. Each opponent loses 10 life and you gain 10 life. This is from the Kaldheim. Yeah, these are when they were doing the $20 pre-constructed decks, which they really should go back to. Those were absolutely amazing. And this was one of them. This was $20 for like a Golgari Elf Ball deck, and it's insanely fun. I love Elf Ball. I like that this gives you a win con in the command zone with elves, which is like kind of its biggest issue. And Golgari Elves gives you access to cards like Shaman of the Pack, which is a great way to win the game. Next up is Mazarek, Kroll Death Priest. It's a 5-mana 2/2 legendary creature insect shaman flying. Whenever a player sacks another permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Yeah, this is a fun commander, especially with how many treasures and everything are in the game right now. Like, this can absolutely pop off as an insect, which is cool. Like, there's definitely a lot of Golgari insects if you want to try to build that deck. Next up is Marin of Clan Nel Toth. A 4-mana 3/4 legendary creature human shaman. Whenever another creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. Beginning of your end step, choose target creature card in your graveyard. That card's mana value is less than or equal to the number of experience counters you have. Return it to the battlefield, otherwise put it into your hand. This is going to be a hot take, maybe not. I still kind of want to build a Marin deck. It's crazy I haven't yet. It's mostly because one player in my group really hates Marin, and we had a bad experience when we first started playing. Andrew, if you're watching this is your fault. So that kind of turned us off of Marin for a while, but as a lover of graveyard decks, I really just want to try building Marin. And I have a foil Spore Frog, so, you know, that's fun. Next up is Nath of the Glintleaf. 5 mana 4/4, legendary creature, elf warrior. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may have target opponent discard a card at random. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you may create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. So, yeah, not fun. I don't like playing discard decks, and that's me personally. I don't think opponents enjoy them, especially at random. It takes away like a sense of agency from players that I play Commander as a social game, not just to win. Playing CEDH or 60 card formats, that's a very different story. But for Commander, I'm not interested in having people randomly discard, and it's target opponent. So it's not like you can even pick someone who has a bunch of cards in hand. It's target opponent, so you can pick someone who has a lot of cards in hand, rather. But I guess it's like good, but I don't know. I'm not into this. Next up is Namada Primeval Warden. This is a 4 mana 3/4 legendary creature tree folk with reach. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. When you do, you make a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. You may pay 1, sack a sapperling, gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Play a 1 and a black, sack 2 sapperlings, draw a card. I'll put this, I think, above, like here, I think. It's Graveyard Hate from the command zone. You get incidental value when people's creatures dies and you can exile it, which is great. I'm sure people will hate this commander, but I think this is a fine effect. It's not that overpowered. It's not a 4 mana creature, so you can kill it easily. Unless someone else is playing a graveyard deck at the table. It's not even when they would be milled, it's when it would die. So it's not that big of a deal. Next up is Old Man Willow. A 4 mana star legendary creature tree folk. Power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. Whenever it attacks, you may sack another creature or a token. When you do, target creature and opponent controls gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Great, not fun. Next, Old Rutstein. It's a 3 mana 1/4 legendary creature human peasant. When Old Rutstein enters the battlefield, or at the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. If a land card is milled this way, make a treasure. If a creature is milled this way, make a 1/1 green insect creature token. A non-creature non-land card is milled this way, make a blood token. So, this is going to go at the top end of not fun, which is like a weird distinction. I wish there was ways to get more triggers than just one a turn on this. Then I'd be more interested, or if it's whenever you mill a card and that triggers once each turn. The fact that you only get this one time a turn cycle is just not like worth it in my opinion. Next up is Old Stick Fingers. This is an X green black legendary creature horror with star. When you cast a spell, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X creature cards. Put all creature cards revealed this way into your graveyard, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Old Stick Fingers' power and toughness are equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. This is interesting. So you pay X and you mill X creatures is essentially what this is saying. So you don't mill over your reanimates, your animate deads, necromancies, dread returns, any of that. You literally are just putting creatures into the yard. Now, of course, you can build this as a combo deck, which it is in CEDH. You only have 1 or 2 creatures in your deck. You can guarantee mill them. However, as a casual commander, it's pretty efficient mill because you're never going to mill over your, well, not never, but your non-creature spells that you want to use to either reanimate or return cards from your graveyard to your hand. I think I'm going to put this the tail end of fun. I think it's fun, not kind of fun. Next up is Farika, God of Affliction. 3 mana 5/5 legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible. As long as your devotion to black and green is less than 7, Farika isn't a creature. And you may pay black and a green, exile target creature card from a graveyard. Its owner puts a 1/1 black and green snake enchantment creature token with Death Touch onto the battlefield. So you exile a creature card, the owner of that card makes a snake. I don't know why it says I don't know if there's a lore reason for it, but I wish this just said exile target creature card from a graveyard and you make a snake. If so, I'd be more interested in this. But as it stands now, I'm not interested in this as a commander. It's just, I don't want to be giving my opponents Death Touch snakes, generally. There might be some exceptions like with Griswold, but I don't know. I don't think this is a fun commander. I think it's great in the 99 of decks, though. Next up is Pippin, Warden of Isengard. This is a 2 mana 2/2 legendary creature, Halfling Advisor. So this is one of the partner withs. I'm only going over again this one. When I do my full Abzan video, I'll probably end up covering both sides. But you can pay 1, tap, create a food, tap, sack 4 foods. Other creatures you control get +3/+3 and haste till end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Again, this is as a solo commander. I don't think this is fun. As a partner pair, though, I know it is like a pretty fun partner pair, but when I do the Abzan video, we'll go over that. Next up is Polynchronos Unchained. This is a 4-mana 0/0 legendary creature zombie hydra. When it enters the battlefield with 6+1/+1 counters on it. If it escapes, it enters with 12. If damage would be dealt to Polynchronos while it has a +1/+1 counter on it, spread that damage and remove that many counters. Pay 1 a black and a green, and it fights another creature. You can escape it for 6 mana and exile 6 other cards from your graveyard. I don't think this is a fun command. I think it's kind of fun. It gets big, but if someone deals 12 damage to it, it still takes 12 damage. Of course, if you can put enough, you have enough proliferation, and you can make this kind of indestructible, but I don't know. I don't think it's a fun commander. Next up is Rayhan, Last of the Abzan, 3-mana 0/0 legendary creature human warrior. When it enters, you put 3+1. It enters with 3+1/+1 counters on it. Whenever a creature you control dies or is put into the command zone, if it had 1 or more +1/+1 counters on it, you may put that many +1/+1 counters on target creature as partner. As an individual commander, I think it's actually fine. I think it's more fun than, I like that it specifies in the command zone because of how the old wording used to be, where if a creature, although not wording, rules used to be, where when a commander died, it didn't actually go to the graveyard like it does now. So that wording is kind of irrelevant and might have been errated. Well, I guess if it goes to the command zone for any reason, there's like return it to the command zone, it still is relevant. But you get to put them on any creature. So it's almost like an Oozolith, kind of. Yeah, I think it's fine. And it's not another creature, so it's even if Rayhan goes to the command zone, you still gotta move them. Next up is Sapperling of Kolfener. This is a 5-mana 2/5 legendary creature Treefolk Shaman with Indestructible. Whenever it attacks, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, you gain life equal to its toughness and lose life equal to its power, then put it into your hand. The 2/5 Indestructible, okay. That actually, I'm gonna put that at the top end of kind of fun. Yeah, that's kind of fun. It's a toughness matters commander, so you can try to gain a whole bunch of life, or it's just a life gain commander. And it's indestructible. So you could just not give us any keywords and just kind of swing it at people for value. And I think most people will be okay with just kind of chump blocking it, because it has to be a creature that you reveal. So you could do an Omari companion deck with this and have only creatures in your deck, and then have only ones that have like low power, high toughness. It's like a toughness matters deck. Or get really spicy and do like a wild pair deck with it. Next up is Sarloff Realm Eater. 3-mana 3/3 legendary creature wolf. Whenever a permanent opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on it on Sarloff at the beginning of your upkeep. If it has 1 or more +1/+1 counters on it, you may remove all of them. If you do, exile each other non-land permanent with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of counters removed this way. So this is almost a Demolition Field, or not Ratchet Bomb. What's the card I'm thinking of? I don't remember. Engineered Explosives. In the command zone, and whenever a permanent opponent controls put into the graveyard. Yeah, so if they sack a treasure or something, it puts a counter on this, and then you can just exile every other non-land permanent if this has enough counters, so it's just a board wipe in the command zone. I don't think that's fun, though. I truly don't. I think it's kind of fun. I don't think it's not fun, but yeah, I'll put it there. The art's gorgeous. Next up is Savra, Queen of the Golgari. 4-mana 2/2 legendary creature Elf Shaman. Whenever you sack a black creature, you may pay 2 life. If you do, each other player sacks a creature. Whenever you sacrifice a green creature, you may gain 2 life. So it's an Aristocrats deck, but you want to be sacking specifically Golgari creatures. So each other player will also sack a creature, and then you get to gain 2 life. You have to pay 2 life to do that effect, though. So it ends up being neutral. Technically, you pay it first, and then actually, I don't know how that would work if you sack a Golgari creature. I guess both triggers go on the stack, so you can gain the 2 life, then pay the 2 life. Anyways, I think that's fun. I like sacrifice decks, and I like that you want to build it in a very specific way, where you can go all green creatures for life gain, or all black creatures for edicts, or focus mostly on like gold creatures. Next up is Shelob, Child of Ungoliant. I'm saying that wrong, I don't care. 6-mana 8/8 legendary creature Spider Demon, Death Touch, Ward 2. It's not Ward 3 like Voja, so it's a balanced card. Other spiders you control have Death Touch and Ward 2. Never mind, it gives everything Ward 2. Busted should be banned. Whenever another creature dealt damage this turn by a spider you control dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a food artifact. With 2 tap, sack this artifact, you gain 3 life, and it loses all other card types. Notably, it doesn't lose abilities, which is great. And it can be your own creatures, because it's whenever another creature you've controlled this turn dies. So you can have your spiders kill each other and then get effects. I don't think you want to do that, but you could. And for that reason, it's very fun. I had to put it up here. Next up is Shestra Death's Whisper. 4 mana, 1/3 legendary creature, human elf warlock. Half elves. When it enters, target creature blocks this turn if able. Okay. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. Great, that was easy. Next up is Sisters of Stone Death. This is a 8 mana, 7/5 legendary creature Gorgon. Pay a green, target creature blocks Sister of Stones blocks this creature this turn if able. Black and a green, remove from the game target creature blocking or blocked by this creature. And then 2 and a black, put a creature removed from the game with Sister of Stone Death into play under your control. That is a lot of... That is worded so weird to me. I don't know why I struggled reading that. Okay, so basically, you make a creature forced to block it, then you remove that creature from the game, and then you cheat that, then you put that creature into play under your control for 6 mana. After playing an 8 mana commander. That is no protection or keywords. Okay, well, man, it seems it. How about that like here? It's definitely an interesting commander. I don't know if I'd build it though. Next up is Skullbriar the Walking Grave. It's a 2 mana 1/1 legendary creature zombie elemental with haste. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Counters remain on Skullbriar as it moves to any zone other than a player's hand or library. So, if you want to be like really mean, what you do is if someone has this and you can put a -1/-1 counter on it, it keeps that counter until it goes into their hand or their library. If you're playing Skullbriar and that happens to you, or just put a bunch of -1/-1 counters on it. So if you're playing Skullbriar and that happens to you, you probably want to have a land that lets you take Skullbriar from the command zone and put it into your hand, because at least it'll lose the counters that way. As for how fun it is, I think it's a fun commander. I'll put it like up here. Next up is Slimefoot Stowaway. The Stowaway. 3 mana, 2/3 legendary creature fungus. Whenever a sapperling you control dies, Slimefoot deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. You may pay 4 generic, make a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. So, I think this is a fun commander. I love sapperling decks. Powerful card. You get to pay 4 generic and make a 1/1. Remember, this isn't commander damage. However, Slimefoot deals damage. So if you can give it Infect with like Tainted Strike, it does deal poison damage instead, which is funny. Next up is Smeagol, Helpful Guide. 3 mana 4/2 legendary creature Halfling Horror. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died under your control this turn, the ring tempts you. Whenever the ring tempts you, target opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a land. Put that card onto the battlefield tapped under your control, and the rest into their graveyard. You mill a bunch of cards, and then you get a land. Well, technically, you reveal them, you put a land, and then you put them in the graveyard. I don't know why it's worded that way. I'm sure there's some reason, but let me know in the comments if you know why it's worded that particular way. As for fun, I do want to build this. I think I actually have a pretty, like, a alternate art copy laying around I need to, like, get built. I need some Ring Tempts Me cards for this. Any of your if a creature under your control this ring tempts you. Yeah, so you just want other ways to just have the ring tempt you. Next up is Spinneret Arachnobat. This is a 5 mana 2/4 legendary creature spider performer. I will be real with you. I didn't know this card existed. I haven't read anything else about it yet. I love the art. I love the flavor. Let's hope this is a fun commander. Maybe I'll throw it up to wanna build because it looks cool. As reach, okay. ETBs, you open an attraction. Okay, as long as you control 3 or more attractions, it gets +2/+0 and has menace. Well, that was disappointing. Kind of fun, I guess. It's Golgari attractions. I wish there was more to it. I understand it's an uncommon, but I wish whenever you rolled an attraction and you hit like a 6 or something, you got like a spider. I think that'd be cool if there was some payoff to attractions with this, but then you'd have to be rare. That's okay. I like the card. It's pretty. Next up is Storev Devkarin Lich. I said that flawlessly. 4 mana 5/4 legendary creature zombie elf wizard with trample. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, return to your hand target creature or planeswalker in your graveyard that wasn't put there this combat. So, sure. I guess like here. It's trample and Golgari, which is pretty unusual actually, but it's not that interesting. Actually, I'm going to keep it here because it has trample and Golgari, which I like. Next up is the Gitrog Monster. This is a 5 mana legendary creature frog horror, 6/6 with death touch. At the beginning of your upkeep, sack the Gitrog Monster unless you sack a land. You play an additional land on each of your turns. Whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. You'll notice that we got to this and I just kind of threw it up into wanna build. There's a bias because the Gitrog is probably my favorite creature in all of Magic. I have every printing of it now, officially, so that's really neat, and I have this in pretty much every Golgari deck, and I want to build it as a Golgari commander. I don't know why I haven't. Maybe just land decks aren't like that interesting to me, but I love Gitrog, so that's okay. Next up is the Gitrog Ravenous Ride. 5 mana, 6/5 legendary creature frog horror mount with trample and haste. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may sack a creature that's saddled at this turn. If you do, draw X cards, put X land cards, up to X land cards from your hand onto the battlefield tapped, where X is a sack creature's power, saddle 1. Again, I actually do really want to build this, and I think realistically I'll put it here. I gotta write an article on this commander at the Commander's Herald, which is really cool, building a deck around this card. Like, it was spoiled, and then I was immediately working on an article for it. That was really fun. The card seems really neat. Trample Haste is not you don't see that on Golgari creatures all that often. Saddle 1's a pretty low cost. But yeah, I really like this card. Next up is the Most Dangerous Gamer. 4 mana 2/2 legendary creature, human gamer guest. Can't believe gamer is a creature type. With Death Touch, when it enters the battlefield or attacks, open an attraction. Hey, the attraction commander. Whenever you open an attraction, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then whenever you claim the prize of an attraction, destroy target permanent. Okay. So claiming the prize of the attraction is whenever you roll a dice and you get one of the numbers. I think 1s always miss, 6s are always hits, and then everything else is variance. So, and destroy target permanent. That's wild. You could just blow up people's lands with this. I honestly kind of want to build this, I think. I don't reroll. I'll actually move Gitrog into very fun. But yeah, I think I want to build the Most Dangerous Gamer. I think it's going to go up here. Next up is the Myco Tyrant. 3 mana star legendary creature elder fungus with trample. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of creature cards you control that are fungi and or saplings. And at the beginning of your end step, you create X 1/1 black fungus creature tokens. With this creature can't block, where X is the number of times you've descended this turn. So each time a permanent card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, you descend. So it's like Graveyard Storm. This card would be higher on the list if it wasn't an absolute nightmare to track in paper if you're milling a lot. Especially with cards like Life from the Loam or just Dredge. It can be like a pain to keep track of how many times this is triggered. Online, I love it because it's kept track of for me, so I don't have to think about that. But I think it's still fun. I would just have it higher on the list and even maybe up to want to build in paper if it wasn't such a nightmare to keep track of. Next up is Tyvar the Bellicose. 4 mana 5/4 legendary creature elf warrior. Whenever one more elves you control attack, they gain death touch until end of turn. Each creature you control has, whenever a mana ability of this creature resolves, put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the number of mana this creature produced. This ability triggers only once each turn. So this is actually, I'm gonna put this up here, I think. It maybe goes into wanna build. It's a mana dork deck, which is pretty neat. So elves get 1 counters. Cards, I'm trying to think of a card that gives you a bunch of mana. That's a mana ability. So like notably, Deathrite Shaman is not a mana ability. So it doesn't work with it. But any creatures that produce Llanowar Tribe gives you 3 green, so it's a 3 mana 3/3 that gets 3 counters put on it whenever you tap it. And if you have Seedborn Muse or Quest for Renewal, or any ways to just untap all your creatures, an easy way to put a bunch of counters on them each turn. Also notably works well with land creatures, because land creatures still have the ability to tap for mana and their creatures. So if you have Seedborn Muse, Wilderness Reclamation for all your land creatures, and you untap all your lands, and you can tap them for mana. I'm sure there's some infinite with this. Really cool. Next up is Umari the Collector. 4 mana 4/5. As companion, a legendary creature Ooze. Companion, each non-land card in your starting deck shares a card type. So unfortunately, because it's a creature, you have to have all your cards in your deck be creatures. I'm 99% sure that's how that works. Well, because your commander is a creature. So that's considered your starting deck, so you can't companion it unless it's all creatures. As it enters the battlefield, choose a card type. Spells you cast the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. As a commander, I think this is actually pretty fun. You can do that might be weird considering where I put Honest Rutstein, but this lets you reduce the cost of any type. So with cards such as Lime Against Humanity, you can Umari the Collector, name sorceries, and sorceries now are cheaper. So it gives you a bit of flexibility with how you want to build your deck. If you want to build a Golgari Enchantress, this is great because it reduces the cost of your enchantments. That flexibility, I think, is really interesting. Or even like Golgari artifacts, where you can now just say, hey, I want my artifacts to cost 1 less to cast, and now you have a bunch of eggs. Next up is Urg, Spawn of Thurg. 3 mana, star 5, legendary creature, Frog Beast. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of land cards in your graveyard. I'm sorry, its power is not its toughness. Its toughness is 5. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. Pay a green and a black, sack a land, gain 2 life. It's fine. I'm not that interested in this as a commander. I think it's great in the 99 of decks, but overall, it's just kind of meh. Next up is Varlaws, the Scar Striped. 3 mana, 2/2, legendary creature, roll warrior. Each creature card in your graveyard has Scavenge. The Scavenge cost is equal to its mana value. So exile a creature card from your graveyard and pay its mana cost. Put a number of +1/+1 counters on equal to that card's power on target creature. Scavenge only is a sorcery. Then you can sack another creature and regenerate Varlaws. Varls? I'm saying that wrong. Doesn't matter. This is fun. I think it's here, or very fun, I should say. This scavenge mechanic's interesting because you want to have just really high-powered creatures with low mana cost. If Phyrexian Dreadnought wasn't, I don't know, $100 or something at the time of recording, it would be great in the deck because its scavenge cost would be 1, so you pay 1 and put 12 counters on something. Also great was Amzu because you're paying the scavenge cost. So you exile a creature card from your graveyard, then you get an insect, and then you can put more counters on that well, you have to target for the scavenge, so you can't put them on that insect. Also great with Insidious Roots. This could be a really cool Insidious Roots deck because you're getting plants, so you can keep growing your plants and scavenging either cheap creatures or expensive creatures if, depending on how much mana you want to spend. Next up is Vati Ildal. 4 mana, 3/3 legendary creature, human warrior. Tap, target creature's power or toughness becomes 1 until end of turn. Alright, so this is... Alright, what do you think of this card? You just get to turn a creature into a 1/1. Its power or toughness, which is just kind of funny. Honestly, I'm gonna put that above. I'm gonna put that like here. I think that's just a funny ability. And if you can somehow build around it with like untapping this and then tapping it and like changing everyone's creatures into 1/1s, or like 1 toughness X ones, I think that's really funny. Or if someone has a massive board, you can turn all of their stuff into 1X. If you can like untap this enough or like find ways of copying it, I think that's funny. Next up is Vraska the Silencer. 3 mana, 3/3 legendary creature, Gorgon Assassin with Death Touch. Whenever a non-token creature an opponent controlled dies, you may pay 1. If you do, return that card to the battlefield tapped under your control. It's a treasure artifact with tap, sack this artifact, add 1 mana of any color, and loses all other card types. So this is like the Spider Commander, where the treasures don't actually lose the ability of the creature. So if a non-token creature an opponent control dies, so if you kill someone's Bob, or I don't know, give me something else, Gray Merchant, even if they ETB, you get a token that has their abilities, which is a treasure, which is really cool. I think this is the top end of very fun. I might want to build it. I'm still conflicted. I don't know if there are a lot of ways in Golgari to give people creatures, but if you can give away your own creatures and then kill them and then return it tapped under your control, that'd be cool. And notably, they don't go to the graveyard, which I think is, they don't get exiled. They're actually just on your board, which makes it a little bit easier to track, kind of, which is interesting. And they have mana value, so if you have ways of turning these artifacts into creatures, in Golgari you don't really, but in Sultai you have like Rise and Shine or Cyberdrive Awakener. You could also do that. Next up is Willow Dusk Essence Seer. This is a 3 mana, 3/3 legendary creature, Dryad Druid. Pay 1, tap, choose another target creature, put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the amount of life you gain this turn, or the amount of life you've lost this turn, whichever is greater. Activate only as a sorcery. So it's a life gain commander. You can put a bunch of counters on it, put a life lost or gained, whichever is greater. This was one of the pre-con commanders, so I think it'll be fun. I think it's less fun than Dina, though. Actually, no, it's more fun. Actually, it's going to go like here, because it's +1/+1 counters and life gain, and so you could put stuff on like Walking Ballistic or Skellion, a lot of options with this. I think putting a bunch of counters on, not Diregraph Captain, Newsgraph Mob. I don't know why that Diregraph. Newsgraph Mob is really funny because whenever people cast spells, you get zombies, so you can just keep kind of giving it counters. And then we have Yargle and Multani. This is a 6 mana, 18/6 legendary creature frog spirit elemental with nothing. It's vanilla. The flavor text is really good. I'm not going to read it. This is actually a very fun commander, which might be weird as it goes at like the tail end of very fun for me. The reason why I'm putting it up here is you do a lot of like fling shenanigans with it. Also, it's an 18/6, which is fun. So yeah. So I realized as I finished recording this, I actually forgot some commanders on my list because of the Scryfall search that I used. So sorry about that. What we're going to go ahead and do is cover them now. So we also have Blex, Vexing Pest, 3 mana 3/2 legendary creature pest, other pests you control, other pest, beast, bats, insects, snakes, and spiders you control, get +1/+1, and then whenever it dies, you can gain 4 life. There's also a backside to it, which is Search for Blex. It's a 4 mana sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put any number of them into your hand and the rest into the graveyard. You lose 3 life for each card put into your hand this way. So it's 4 mana. You can essentially lose 15 to draw 5 cards, which isn't a great rate, especially since Sign in Blood is usually it's draw 2, lose 2, so it'd be a life a card. Or you just mill 5 of them, which is also pretty good. And it's a sorcery in the command zone. So, but where do I think Blex is? It's a insect commander. I think because there's also like the backside to it, I think it can be pretty fun. I think it's gonna go like here. I think. Kind of funny. I have all the Strixhaven commanders kind of lined together. Next up is Chatterfang, Squirrel General. A 3 mana 3/3 legendary creature Squirrel Warrior with Forest Walk. If one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus that many 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens are created instead. Pay a black, sack X squirrels, target creature gets +X/-X until end of turn. So this goes infinite with Pitiless Plunderer, or the new Phyrexian Altar creature from MH3, which I'm not going to spoil, but you can look it up. Or Phyrexian Altar. Not Phyrexian Altar, because you need a thing to... Yeah, you need a token to enter. So it's Pitiless Plunderer. And I'm sure there are plenty of other options for it. This is going to go in the fun category, which might be weird. I think it's fun, but it can get pretty repetitive after playing it a few times. I wish there was a Squirrel Commander that was just a little bit more interesting in Golgari. I love Chatterfang, I really do. I like it in the 99 of decks where you're just coincidentally making tokens. I had it in my Tormod deck for a while, so every time I'd make a 2/2 zombie, I'd also make a squirrel. But I don't know if it's like very fun as a commander just because of how powerful it can be. Which is a weird thing to say, but power and fun don't always line up, which is okay. Next up is Ishkana, Graph Widow. 5 mana, 3/5 legendary creature spider with reach, Delirium. So if it enters the battlefield, if there are 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard, you put 3 1/2 green spider creature tokens with reach onto the battlefield, and you pay 6 in a black. Target opponent loses 1 life for each spider you control. So it's another spider injured commander, much like Lord of the Rings one. It's gonna go right behind that one. Oddly enough, I like Delirium. You only get 3 1/2s. However, you don't have to cast it, and not a lot of ways to blink in green-black. There are some ways, but even if you like reanimate this a few times, and then you can pay 7 mana, and an opponent will lose life equal to the number of spiders you control, which is wild. Next up is Valentine, Dean of the Vein. A 1 mana 1/1 legendary creature Vampire Warlock with Menace and Lifelink. If a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. When you do, you may pay 2. If you do, you make a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. Not really interested in this as a commander. Just, it's 2 mana to make a 1/1. It's a 1 mana commander, which is cool. If you want to run like Commander Storm cards, you have that option. And the other side is Lisette, Dean of the Root. 4 mana 4/4 legendary creature human druid. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 1. If you do, you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain trample until end of turn. I think this is a more interesting commander than the front side, which is weird. And I'm also pretty sure commander tax applies to both sides of the card. So if you play it for one, the backside then costs more, I think. I don't think they're independent of each other. So that's kind of a downside, but pay 1 life, put a counter. I think the backside of this is more fun. It's only 1 mana to like put a bunch of counters on stuff, and then you get trample, so your big lifelinking creatures can end up with like a lot of value. That like, or your big travel creatures that might just be like vanillas otherwise, you get trample, so at least it helps close the game out. And that wraps up the Golgari Fun ranking. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, let me know if I missed any commanders. I might have. I don't think I did, so I hope not. And if you want to do your own tier list, I'll have this linked in the video description. Alrighty, nerds. I'll see you next time.